My brother's still out there. My sister-in-law. I've had many friends overdose. Too many people are dying. Something has to change. But the only way that'll happen is if I change me. My dad said one time, "You only have to change one thing, son." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Everything." And that's what I'm doing today. Give me a call before it's too late. You or a loved one, I'm here for you. Love you guys. Big D here. You know to hit me up if you need me. Jack Bingham has a YouTube channel. It'll be in the description of this video. Make sure you go check it out. And this is one of the more, I don't know, man, just journey with me on this one because this one's pretty deep. All right, guys. Welcome back. Here we go. We got Jack Bingham with us. What's going on, my man?
What's going on, man? Good to meet you.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about this one because I actually saw your interview on your channel. And for those of you who don't know Jack, make sure you go and subscribe to his channel. He's got a YouTube channel. He's also written a book, and he has delved into some places in his mind. If you've ever heard this story, you're going to hear some of it here now. That I have never, ever heard anything on this level. So if you're not familiar with OCD, this is a whole different level, and you're going to get technical here as well. So explain to us what it is, and then I'd like to know about your journey.
Yeah, so OCD is technically like an anxiety disorder, right? So it's hard to really explain, but obviously people know it stands for Obsessive-Compulsive disorder. And so it's sort of like addiction in that way, where you have the obsessive thought that just kind of goes and goes and goes, and you don't really get any relief from it until you do the compulsion. And the obsession causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic, like a lot of fear, more fear than I can really describe. But it's to the point where you'll do stuff even though you know it's irrational. So you're kind of aware that it's crazy, but you're doing it anyway, just to get that relief. It's sort of like using just to not be dope sick. Like you're not getting high when you're doing your compulsion. You're just not in hell, if you know what I mean. But eventually that whole pattern becomes hell. Like, oh, here we go again, washing my hands for the 98th time today. Like, you know, washing my hands to the point where they're cracked open and bloody, and just like, because the soap dries them out, and you're like, well, here we go again. I just touched the wrong doorknob and I got to do it all over again. So it can become, people don't realize how insane it can become, eh?
You touched on some things just now, and I think that that's part of your story. I'd like to get that story, if you don't mind sharing it with us, because I've heard of people who are OCD. No, they need to be alphabetical, or no, put your P's with your P's, and you put the, like, there's a very strange focus on things that normal individuals don't experience. And if you wouldn't mind, take us to where it started. Okay, like that you can remember. I don't know if there was a definitive moment, but this, like, what happened, and progressively take us into kind of like, you know, how you made it out even so far. So like, but ultimately start somewhere, show us what happened, and explain some of the things you began to do and develop on that, because it's insane.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. All right, so to start off, it's a bit heavy, but just know that I'm a lot better now, so your viewers don't feel bad for me or whatever. But so when I was about 6 to 8, I went through sexual trauma in my childhood. And that sort of started, I was already a warrior. I was already one of these, you know, all those things you hear, like didn't fit in, was kind of weird, was kind of withdrawn, shy. And then when that happened, I was like, I guess I latched onto these weird ideas about like contamination. So I would constantly feel dirty. I would feel like, it centered for me around body fluids a lot, like piss, shit, like saliva. Like I really hated that. And so it started off with just like, oh, I'm washing my hands for maybe double or triple the amount of time a normal person does when they go to the washroom. You got to remember, I'm like 8 or 9, right? And then slowly it starts like, okay, well, if someone goes to the washroom and they don't wash their hands, and then they touch like the door, and then I touch the door, now I have to go and wash my hands. And so it started like that, and I was like, okay, and then like suppose they touch the door and then they touch something else. Now that other thing's contaminated. And I'm starting to keep track of all this in my mind, even though I'm like a little kid. I'm like, okay, the door's contaminated, the seat's contaminated, my clothes are, my hands. And so that went on for like a couple of years, and my parents did notice, right? Like my mom was like, you're washing your hands like 10, 15 times in like an hour. And I'm like, well, you know, like I just feel dirty or whatever. I couldn't really articulate it. And then it's hard to say what exactly happened, but school started to notice, like friends, it became hard to go to school. Like I used to bring, those like Lysol wipes or whatever, those like disinfecting wipes. So I'd take those on the bus with me. Like I'd wait at the end of my road for the school bus, and then I'd get on and wipe down my seat. Like kids thought I was crazy, right? And even I did. I was like, okay, what the hell am I doing, right? Like this is nuts. And then it got even so bad, like to the point where I thought stuff could happen through the air. So like, let's say you went to the washroom and touched the faucet, and then your hand went near me. I would think that little particles that come off your hand, I'd breathe them in, and I would have to cough. And like, since there's a video, I can show you, I would cough and like shake my head like this and try and like blow away what I thought was contaminated air. And then when it got really bad, and it's probably its worst, was I couldn't really blow away the contaminated air. So I can remember I was probably like 14, and it was a summer break, and I couldn't leave my house at all for the whole summer break. I thought all the air in my house was contaminated at the head level. So I would literally like duck and walk like that just to the washroom. I would shower for like 8 hours because I couldn't take a pee without showering. So I would hold my pee like all day. I would hold it for like 24 hours. Then I would take a pee and do this crazy, ridiculous process of showering for like, 8 hours sometimes. Like in high school, it was the beginning of high school. So I'd get up at like 5 a.m, and I'd be lucky if I made it to school for 1 p.m. And I'd spend that whole time in the shower, in the washroom, showering, getting out of the shower, realizing I need to go back in. Like that checking thing you hear, like a lot of people with OCD, like, oh, I have to check the stove like 100 times, or I have to check the locks on the door 100 times. For me, it was like that, but it was all this. I thought piss and shit was everywhere. Like, I can't explain it, right? I was like tracking everything in my mind. It became insane. And it like, I'm saying it kind of joking around, but you can imagine like at a certain point, like it became pretty serious, right? Like I was like, I wanted to kill myself every waking moment because I knew it was crazy, right? Like I had a brother and he wasn't doing this stuff. I had a mom, she wasn't doing this stuff. Nobody at school was. I couldn't figure out why I was doing it. It felt insane to me, but I couldn't stop. And if I tried to prevent it, like if I got contaminated, which is what I would always say, and if I tried to maybe resist the idea of doing the compulsion, all it would do is make it take 10 times longer when I finally gave in. Like a compulsion that maybe would have taken 10 minutes, if I held off on it for 10 minutes, then I'd have to do a compulsion for like an hour, where I'd be like standing under my ceiling fan, shaking and coughing, trying to blow this weird contaminated air from me. Like you lose a lot of sleep when you're like that, man. Like
Wow,
I would stay up.
Oh, I was going to say, I've never heard of that kind of, that OCD. I've heard people who are like OCD, but that, I mean, the idea that the contaminants are in the air and you can't even breathe. Like you can't even freaking breathe. That's insane. So delve in. I know there's some darker. It gets darker. It gets to a point where you don't even want to live anymore. It's like, but you obviously you can't die. You're stuck. So lead up to that point, because I know it gets worse. This is insane, though. I just want to point that out for our audience that if you're not seeing how crazy this is right now. You made it, though. That you made it is awesome. So, and I think a lot of men, what I also want to say that I respect and appreciate about you is that a lot of men are afraid to mention the sexual traumas. They're afraid to come out and say that they have been in situations in their past. And everybody in their own way have different things that they may have had to deal with. I'm really, my hat goes off to you for being open and honest about that, Jack, because a lot of men are afraid to mention those types of things. You know how it is. There's a stigma. So anyway, I don't want to sidetrack on that, but yeah, take us further into this, brother, because this is insane.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I guess at a certain point, it went from like, oh, this is what I'm doing, to like, I won't be able to continue doing this, if that makes sense. Like, it was that line of manageability. Like, okay, I can sometimes go to school. I can go enough to maybe pass. I can still, like, I'm from Canada, so we play hockey and stuff. So I can still kind of play hockey on the weekend. It's hard, but I can do it. But then I would say when I was around 15, so I guess 10th grade, that's when I thought the entire school was contaminated. I thought every person at the school was, the air there. I couldn't go to school anymore. And so I was like, well, like, what am I going to do? Like, if I can't go to school and can't finish high school, then I definitely won't be able to go to college. I won't be able to get a job. I was like, I don't know how much you swear, but I was like, I'm fucked, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
so what happened was it got to the point where like everything was taking, you know, so long and there was no life left. Like I couldn't hang out with friends. I couldn't, my whole life just became inside my basement or inside my bedroom, just honest to God, 24 hours straight, just compulsion, compulsion, compulsion. It was, things were becoming insane. I was starting to think that like contaminants could come through electronics, so I wouldn't even like watch TV. Like it became really crazy. It was like, yeah, and I was starting to think like, okay, I'm gonna kill myself. And you know, on my YouTube channel, I interviewed my mom about my OCD, and she said something kind of like how I felt, which was, she just looked at me one day and said like, how long can a person live like this, right? Like how long can a person keep going on if they have to do all this, right? And like for me, I mean obviously like I found drugs that kind of in a way saved my life at the beginning. It ended up like being just as bad as the OCD, as you know, like as well as anybody, right? But at the time, that was sort of like my escape. Like we all use drugs to escape as addicts, but like I really needed it. Like I was like the second the second I started drinking and doing drugs, I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like I still did my compulsions, but I didn't really care. I was like, whatever, I feel good inside. Also, I can do this. This is how I'll manage. And then it got really bad as we all know, when addiction set in, then it stopped working. Like the drugs were no longer helping my OCD. So now I'm like doing all the typical addict shit, like going and stealing money, like trying to get high while also managing these compulsions. And it all kind of came to a head when I just said, I'm going to kill myself. Right. And so I did try to kill myself. I realized, okay, I can't stop. I can't live like this. Like I'd been to doctors, right? And this was kind of like not great, but they would tell me there's really nothing that we can do. You're always going to have OCD. And we can try all these different therapies, but you're still always going to have a certain degree of this. And at the time I was immature. I heard that and I thought, oh, what are you telling me, that I'm screwed? Like, I can't live like this. I just want to be normal. And so, as crazy as it sounds, but like the thought of resisting a compulsion was like, it'd be like if some guy gave you a saw and just said, chop your leg off right now. You'd be like, fuck no. Like, I'm not doing that, right? Like the fear was so great behind stopping. I was like, no, it's not an option. So I'm just gonna kill myself. So I attempted suicide. I mean, I lived, obviously. And then I sort of like got to that point of desperation that we're all familiar with. And for the OCD, it's very similar to addiction. It's a rock bottom moment where you realize, okay, I'll do whatever anybody tells me to get help, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a story about that final day with OCD if you want to hear it.
Go ahead, brother. I'm all ears.
Awesome. Yeah. So people know it's a good ending. I haven't done a compulsion in almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years on December 14th, I believe. So it got bad to the point where, I mean, I was barely able to leave my house. And since I was using a lot and talking about killing myself a lot, my mom was worried about me. So she would sometimes bring me to work because she works in an office, but alone, right? So she could kind of bring me into her office. And she had like a little private bathroom where I could just endlessly wash my hands all day until we went home, which is basically what I was doing at that point. And so I go to work with my mom and I'm washing my hands. It's probably like 2 or 3 hours of washing my hands, like all the way up to my elbows. And this woman comes into the bathroom, my mom's friend. And I guess she had been a therapist. She was elderly now, but she had been a therapist. And she kind of grabbed onto my arm, which pissed me right off, because when people touched me, I was like, it freaked me out, right? Like, I hadn't hugged my mom in like 13 years. Like, I hadn't, you know what I mean? I hadn't touched anybody. So I'm like freaked out, and she says, I can help you. And the weirdest thing, man, like, for whatever reason, I believed her. I was like, maybe you can. Like, I don't know. What do I have to lose? And then she was like, okay, well, open up. She's like, come to my house after work or whatever, after your mom's done here, and just tell me exactly how this all started. And dude, it's surreal to even talk about, and like, it makes me emotional. But like,
Go ahead, man.
so
Go
I
ahead.
go to this woman's house, and there was a physical sensation attached to my OCD, meaning like when I got my hand dirty or something, I could feel it physically on my hand. Like, it was like a heaviness to it. And so I would feel that like on my clothes, like I felt like, oh, I need to change my shirt, I need to shower, whatever. So I was feeling like that, this heaviness. And I walk into her house and I sit down with her, and like, I hadn't told anyone about the sexual trauma. Like, I mentioned it to my mom like one day, got it all sorted out like when I was a kid, and then never spoke of it basically. So it was weighing on me, I guess, and I didn't really realize it, right? And so I just told her. I was like, fuck this. I'm just going to tell her, right? So I told her everything. I probably talked for like an hour. And then she like looks at me and she's like, all of this insanity, all this fear is a lie created by the mind of a child. And it was like reading Bill's story from like the AA Big Book or something. It was like that heaviness I was talking about, it just like went away. Like, even my vision, it was like a miracle. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. People like have trouble believing it, but it honestly happened, right? And so I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I've been doing this for no reason. Like, it was like this moment of clarity, and I knew that this was my one shot to get better, right? So from that moment on, I just never did another compulsion. I said no. And like, I ran into the car. I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm cured. And she's like, you're cracked out. Like, you're fucked. Like, get home, right? Like, get home. You probably didn't even go to your house. But like, the best moment ever basically was like, I walked through my front door and I touched the door with my hand, and I hadn't done that in over a decade. And my mom saw my hand on the door and she just burst out into tears. I started bawling my eyes out. We hugged. Like, it like, the obsession doesn't go away right away, just like getting sober. But as time goes on and you fight that obsession, it does leave you. So now I don't even have these thoughts really. Like, it probably took 6 months of never giving in for me to go, okay, like, it's not even real. It's all bullshit or whatever. And so that's basically the story, man.
It's amazing you say that, because even in addiction, you can see how they overlap. It's funny because you know, people would look at it like your drug use and they'd go, well, that didn't help. But if I look back at some moments, and if I was to be honest and not give a shit what anyone thinks or says, there's moments that my using contributed in my personal development in a way that I am who I am today and know what I know, and I'm freed because of experiences that I have developed from certain things. And I don't know if this is in the same vein, but I suspect there could be something there. I was very addicted to religion, okay? Very. OCD about contextualizing theology, and like a very, very religious man. And believe it or not, if it wasn't for the relapses of going back to the real world, so to speak, of experiencing suffering and real trauma and that pain, I don't think I would have been freed from that extreme mindset. I was an extremist to the point where I grew my beard out. I was a Reformed Presbyterian who believed in Puritan ideas. I was following the Puritans in concept, where I couldn't let go of music like the Puritans did, but I was so religious that I was going down the route of possibly having my wife wear a head covering to church to conceal her head, because the Bible says that a woman who doesn't cover her head is ashamed to her spouse, or to her head, which is her spouse. It's like I was taking things to a whole different level, and I was in this world in my head, kind of like what you're saying. If it wasn't for the drugs, I wouldn't have gone there. Now, I'm not out here encouraging that. What I'm saying is for those who may have relapsed, learn something from it. There's something there that might lead you into a path. Yeah, so with that, Jack, you also had addiction as another thing. And so by this time, were you done with the actual drugs and the OCD? Or what was your drug of choice, if you don't mind me asking? Like, how did you get off the drugs?
Yeah. So I guess my drug of choice at that time was probably cocaine. And then I continued using. I stayed sober for maybe a month, something like that, or maybe a couple weeks, because I thought, okay. But I thought in my head, like, okay, if I don't have OCD, then I'm not a drug addict, right? Like, I thought, well, I was wrong about that big time, right? So I spent another, what was it? I guess maybe a year and a half, about another year and a half. I'm 10 months sober now. So it was a year and a half of switching. Yeah, thanks, buddy. And congrats on 4 years. But it was, a year and a half. And it switched from cocaine to Xanax and fentanyl pills. And that lasted for about 6 months. And then now I'm like, yeah, I just kind of I did the same thing with the OCDs with the addiction. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't have this miracle happen and then just go out to die, like, on the streets, right? Like, I need to take advantage of the opportunity that what I believe, like, God gave me, right? So it's, so that's where I am now. It's been quite the journey, man. Like, it's awesome though. Like, I like you were saying, like, all those negative experiences become so worth it once you get to the other side, right? Like, I wouldn't talk to you if this didn't happen. I wouldn't have, like, all these friends in recovery. I wouldn't have, like, I just wouldn't have anything. Like, I would never have had this growth, this personal growth. And so it was worth it, right? And I mean, don't recommend it, right? Like, if you think you should shower for the next 8 hours, try and avoid it. But, like, overall, it was like, it was what I needed to do, right? I needed this to learn. That was my path, right? And I think most people can kind of relate to that.
A lady I heard a man who was on a speaker tape said that this lady, he had been in like 30 different treatment centers and like the detox centers and stuff, and he said this lady in a suit and tie walked in, and she said, if I could give you all the tools and everything of recovery right now and just fix you, I wouldn't do it. And he turns to his buddy, he's like, dude, what a bitch. And come to find out, she followed up by saying, because I wouldn't want to rob you of the journey. And the reason why what you're saying, yeah, man, there's a journey there. And so if you were to tell someone in OCD right now that's in there, that was where you were, which is a very deep, deep place, and if you are having these things, first of all, I know they're going to relate to you, okay? So that's something right there. There's power in that. But what would you tell them right now? They think the air, they think the contaminants, they think this and that. If you were to try and save them right now, what would you do, bro?
That's a good question, man. I mean, I think the number one thing is reaching out, because that's what I would tell them to do. Because, to be honest, you're not going to stop right away. You know what I mean? This is not one of these things. It's it'd be like telling a guy, like, oh, just stop using. Like, that's not really how it works, right? But reaching out, man, it's that loneliness. Like, I was the only guy I knew like this. And so realizing, like, I remember just, like, even looking on the internet and, like, just realizing there was other people like me, but reaching out. And definitely there are certain therapies that work, that will almost, I can guarantee, will work. And that would be like exposure response therapy, which is scary because they expose you to your fear and then they don't let you do your compulsion. But it sounds terrifying. But if you are at that point of desperation, willing to do whatever it takes, do it, because it is possible. And the one thing I want to stress to anyone who has this OCD problem is the fear associated with your obsessions will go away if you stop doing the compulsion. Like, it won't happen day one. I was still afraid for months, but there was a day that came where I realized everything's okay. Everything's fine. And it was like the best feeling ever. Like, it was this, I didn't regret anything at that point. I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, I wasted 10 years or whatever, but I don't give a shit because of how good I feel today. Like, it was all so worth it, man. And so that one day at a time, it's very much like addiction, just one day at a time, one compulsion at a time, you know, one obsession, one step. That's all it takes. And if people want to reach out to me, they can, and I'll reply to everybody, right? It's like, if you're really struggling with this, I'll try my best to get you on the right path, right? Because it's a bitch, man. And I've had people reach out to me who have this problem. So the reason why we don't see a lot of them is because they're all stuck in their damn house.
No, that's a good point, and I love the humor, how you bring light to this, man. And you know, I love what you shared. You have a book. What's the name of your book? Go ahead and share that with people, because I want to put that in the description.
Thanks, man. Yeah, my book's called Obsessive-Compulsive Dramatic. So it's half about OCD, half about addiction. Yeah, if you want to read that to get more info on it, that'd be awesome. And then you can always shoot me an email or Instagram message or whatever, or YouTube comment, and I'll definitely get back to everybody. It's awesome.
Dude, you're awesome, man. You've made it through some really, really tough times, bro. You're 10 months clean now from everything, and I'm proud of you, dude. We got to do a follow-up at some point, maybe meet up in person one day. You know, that's what I'm doing now. I'm actually starting to link up with people and stuff starting to happen. So you're part of my journey in this, and you sent me that book a long time ago. So I really do appreciate you coming on, and we've got to do this again. I know that you have plenty of stories. I'm a story guy. So let's follow up. Let's do another one, man.
Dude, I'm so down. I'd love to interview you too on my channel over there. Because if it wasn't for you, just so people know, I started my channel because you said in a video, everybody watching, just make a damn video. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. And now I think I have over 1,000 subscribers. So, and it's only been a couple months. So if anyone's watching, just make a damn video. You know what I mean? It's Derek will support it. Trust me.
You got that right, man. And I love you, bro. Appreciate you jumping on, and thank you for bringing that passion and giving people hope, you know, because right now there's someone out there, like you said, that's going to watch this, that has OCD, that won't reach out. We're telling you right now, reach out. We're here for you. Jack's here for you. I'm here for you. And he's obviously the one with the experience in OCD. But look, we love you, man. We're going to love you till you can love yourself. So thanks for joining me, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. I love you too, man. I love your content. Awesome, man.
All right, brother.